Welcome, dear innovation drivers. Welcome to this fourth webinar about how to drive innovation excellence in these times of crisis. Today we're going to focus on innovation talent and innovation teams. How can we manage those in those times of crisis? And what we're going to focus on is innovation competences, entrepreneurial competence. What are they and which ones in particular are important in these times? How can we effectively compose teams across those competences, but also how can we motivate teams and individuals? How can we create a safe environment so that groups become better in this virtual way of working at working together? So how can we learn that together? How can we create this safe environment? So we're going to discuss that with the participants in the session. We're going to have the examples and the struggles of those participants on the table. We're going to reflect on that with our coaches from practice being present as well. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and also we're looking forward to seeing you in the weeks to come. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Trust that you can all hear and see me. And welcome from Rotterdam, from the Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship campus. And looking forward to having another interactive hour with you. Today in this next webinar in our series about how to manage innovation excellence in these times of crisis. Today, we're going to focus on teams, innovation teams, and talent in particular. And again, welcome from Rotterdam. And as always, the goals for today are to support you as an innovation excellence manager or driver to help and maintain and improve innovation excellence. And this is important, especially now, we argue, right? Because increasingly, I guess, we are fighting the fire, but increasingly also we become aware of the fact that we need innovation for creating and supporting and building our future, if you will. So because there will be a new next, there will be a new future that we have to create together. And talking about together, this hour I would like to have this as interactive as possible to co-create how to innovate effectively in this new era. So today with a particular focus on talent and team management for innovation, and as a call to action already right now, what we will do in the webinar next week, and that's important because maybe we can prepare ourselves a little bit for that today, is to talk about culture, how to create an innovation and entrepreneurial culture in our organizations, and also, what is the link to maybe some tools and techniques that we have in our repertoire as innovation professionals. So we talk both about culture and the soft side of innovation excellence, and more the hard or the accountability or the performance management sides, which we need both of them to become effective at innovation. But today, as a step towards that webinar next week, let's talk about talent and team management, because at the end of the day, especially in these times, it's about people, our people, that we need for innovation. And talking about the principles of our program, of our philosophy about innovation excellence, we can't stress enough the notion that innovation excellence as a capability requires a systemic perspective, right? So where we view innovation as this combination of skills, tools, metrics, processes, etc., values, in order to be effective and to be contributing to our organization in the mid and long term as well. So more specifically, as a reminder, we talk about this particular engine with these 8 elements in place in order to develop and maintain this capability. So what we did in the first webinar was roughly talk about this entire model as an introduction, with a particular focus on the content of our innovation system, like the vision, the focus, and the intensity with which we innovate. And then in the next 2 webinars, what we did was focus on the innovation process from idea to business model, and last week on innovation portfolio management. So we've seen guest speakers, we've seen cases, and today let's build on top of what we've covered in the last couple of weeks by moving to the area of talent development and teams. And that's something I would like to do without a guest speaker today. So really with exploring together, after sharing some tools and techniques from our side, how this could play out for you in your current organization to maintain and develop innovation excellence. So let's dive in and focus on talent first before we take the step to consider innovation teams. So as a starting point, let's talk about, first of all, what we call innovation drivers. And this is a particular innovation role, which is not so much about executing the innovation, like doing innovation, coming up with ideas and turning them into business models. This is really about, as an innovation driver, supporting in a variety of roles the innovation capability and culture and competence of the organization. So in many organizations, innovation drivers exist, albeit in an informal way. People act in these roles without an explicit mandate for it or an explicit job description. So people just take on this role informally, maybe without even being aware of the fact that there's something like an innovation excellence model, etc. So let's reflect on this for a bit. Also as part of maybe introducing ourselves in this webinar and kicking off the interaction. So innovation drivers, if I may ask, if you look at this sheet in front of you and you look at the variety of roles which have to do with driving innovation and innovation excellence, what would you say is something that resonates with you if you look at your own roles in your organizations? So take your time going over this list of roles, and then if I may ask, looking at the people in the room, like Nick, Marjolein, Bastiaan, and others, is there anything you would like to mention? Like, hey, this is me, or this is what I recognize in what's going on in my organization, or actually this is lacking. So this notion of innovation drivers, what does it make you think, if I may ask?
Do you mean in current times, Ferdinand, or do you mean more in general? Or both?
Is anybody of you an innovation driver? Do you consider yourself to be an innovation driver as part of your role in your organization? Maybe Marjolein or Maurits or Nick, would you recognize part of your activities?
Can you hear me?
I don't know if check the sound of your devices, but feel free to speak up or use the chat function to.
I can hear you, and I think, let me see if it's Arjan here, Nick. I can hear you, but I don't think Ferdinand can hear you. So that's.
All right. So with that, for a minimum, I hope to make you aware of this role of innovation drivers, and. Oh, wait a minute. Thanks, Arjan. So maybe people were speaking up, but I wasn't hearing it. But maybe now it's better. So did anybody speak up just a minute ago? Because apparently I wasn't hearing it. Anybody? Sorry.
Yeah, I did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, way better. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh no, I asked if this. Oh, now I hear myself as well. Oh, okay. If you mean this from the perspective of today or more in general?
No, more in general, and then we can build this link to what we're trying to cover today. So Nick, please.
Well, I think in general, I think what we try to do in general in our organization, or what my role is to try to break down those internal barriers. Actually, constantly, because we're in the business of building products. And today, I would say what is more interesting is even to break down barriers until getting the products to market. Is actually to accept that it's not finished, but we need to act today because of the current society that needs the product that we're building, which is by chance, but that is something that we're doing now.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, that especially in these times, you would say a role of driving innovation is of the utmost importance.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, it is vital for our company to get return on our investment over the last 2 years for one specific product.
Okay, but then I also recognize that this is really about this particular product that you have to accelerate at this point in time. So it's also very much about this innovation project that you would like to push as fast as you can.
Yeah. Well, this project entails like 50% of our R&D budget, so it's almost like it's really vital for the company. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And this particular product or project would you say that in these times there's a more urgent need for that particular innovation? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. It's specifically it can specifically help with the COVID-19 situation. Yeah.
Okay. And that wasn't obviously planned. It seems like this project was already in your let's say portfolio for a longer period of time.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a software tweak that makes it viable for the current situation, which is a privacy concern. But that means a lot of people are against it. But we're trying to break down the barrier and to let people realize that it's fixed for today and it's not intentionally the plan of the product. So that's those barriers are quite intrinsical, I would say. So
Okay.
people, it feels wrong, so to speak, and that's what we're trying to change in the heads of the people developing it.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing, Nick, and I hope to talk to you later in the upcoming discussion. So thanks for kicking this off. Anybody else thinking about innovation drivers and the particular roles associated with it? Is it something that you recognize in your own activities on a daily basis? Anybody?
Yes, it's me, Ferdinand Arjan here from DSM. I recognize this a lot, as you probably will know. So nearly all the elements that you describe here, we could check. I think also at DSM we are in luck that we have a group that is they're called innovation excellence managers, but they're basically innovation drivers. I'm just now looking at the elements, Ferdinand, to find what is the most important one.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you about that.
Yeah, because that's also then a question. Like in these times, are these roles shifting in importance in this particular circumstances, right? So,
Yeah.
So maybe by way of introducing ourselves as well. So thanks, Arjan. Maybe Bastiaan, if you're still in the call, how would you say is your role when it comes to innovation? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm switching between a team meeting at the moment,
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm not
okay.
always here.
Okay.
But if I'm looking at the list and I can check most of the boxes, I think what's getting more important is to get the barriers down internally. Especially I work at IGNH consulting, business consulting, and you do have the problem with budgets and stuff like that is quite harsh. So normally there are more barriers than normal, I think, in a normal corporate on innovation, because it's a different business model. But now you see that on each step there's a thing, and if you need an innovation, it's quite difficult and even more difficult than it used to be to get it done.
In these times,
So
right.
yeah. So I'm mainly focusing on barriers and getting them down.
Okay, nice.
Right now.
Thanks for sharing, introducing yourself, and hold this thought, because I think we can come back to this later on. Thanks, and
Thanks.
please, do manage your different calls at the same time. And
So if I don't respond, I'm switching between.
Okay. That's good. Okay, and anybody else wanting to step in?
Yeah, can you hear me, Fernand?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Marjolein, please go ahead. I thought you were about to initiate. So Marjolein.
Oh, that's me. I run a model agency, and I think there's a lot of innovation possible. So we have a lot of thoughts and ideas. So let's see. But today I'm here to learn mostly.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Thank you. And if you have a question, or if you'd like to contribute, please go ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ferdinand,
yes?
may I ask Marjolein a question? Because I'm interested in, Marjolein, in your neck of the woods. Apparently, sustainability is becoming more important.
Yeah.
Is that something that will that help you? Do you have to innovate? Will it help you in your innovation, or do you go like, well, the whole sustainability thing is not really relevant for us, or is Corona now accelerating the need for sustainability? What's your perspective on that?
To be honest, you're gonna look at different perspectives. So now models were flying weekly to destinations.
Yeah.
We see currently that clients even book them from home. with clothes and even G-Stars doing online projects. So I think there are a lot of things to change, a lot of chances. Yeah.
Clear. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you,
So,
Arjan.
hi everyone, Angelique here. Also part of the ACA team organizing the education program at Erasmus. And I was triggered by something that Nick said, which I think is very interesting in the role of an innovation driver. Because Nick, you mentioned that especially in these times, actually the need for your specific innovation that you're working on is becoming more apparent. And I think one thing that I would like to say about the role of innovation drivers that I have learned also in my previous roles is that it's really crucial that this outside-in perspective, so basically translating what's happening in the world around us and linking that to elements of our innovation portfolio, is a very important skill that you need to have as an innovation driver. Because a lot of people in your organization, and I'm wondering if that's also what you recognize, they might not see what you see because you are very much in depth involved in this particular topic. I think a very important element of the role of an innovation driver is to make what is implicit for a lot of people to also make that explicit and really translate it for them, helping them in their thinking of basically articulating the world around us, which is now more than fuzzy than ever, you could say, and really translating that into a need of a customer and what that need is specifically and how your product that you're working on is answering that need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's the other. Currently, it's the other way around for us, which makes no sense at all for me. As I haven't introduced myself. I'm marketing lead at TWTG. We make industrial IoT products. And normally we are the ones that try to drive the innovation at the client, and now it's the other way around. Now the client is calling us like, okay, we need to do something with this COVID situation, which gives some urgency in our organization. And now the innovation engagement leaders of that organization are actually trying to get internally in the team's head to accelerate the team because they really want the product that they're already working on, which is, really strange. I never had that.
Nick, you sound like innovation driver driven by other drivers. That's interesting.
That's indeed the case. Yeah, which is really strange. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very interesting because it's making very apparent that you're well, first of all, that you were already onto something, and now that is becoming more and more clear for more people. So your role of your driver, your innovation driver role, basically, and that's of course what we're talking about in this session, is changing because of what's happening in the world around you. And that is something that I think is very important also if we are, for instance, in organizations recruiting for people for these particular roles, that you need to have that skill, that you need to be able to make those kinds of shifts, and you need to be very, well, I would say way more flexible compared to others to quickly adapt to changing circumstances. Mm-hmm. And also actually like that. I mean, I think most innovation drivers that I know, they actually, they get a lot of energy off that because it's in their comfort zone. While for a lot of other people, it's actually not.
Mm. Lovely insights there, and also something we can come back to in a bit when we talk a bit more about, how to then indeed motivate others in our teams and in our organizations. So this is a great starting point for that. Thank you. Maurits, then over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me, Ferdinand?
Yes, please. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, well, what I think, I work for TNO Research Institute, and our slogan is Innovation for Life. I think last week the Dutch organization FME wrote a pamphlet stating that the innovation is one of the most important things to recover for economic recovery. because of this crisis, and because of it's a crisis where the demand is dropping. I think that productivity needs to go up, and we can innovate a lot in that. In TNO, we started a sort of crash innovation right after the lockdown started. We call it Brains for Corona, and we reserve budget for researchers to serve the medical industry, for example, to help finding solutions for this. For my group, which is working in the building sector and focusing on sustainability there, work is just going on. But we are of course thinking of future scenarios, how to continue with the programs we started. And what I see is a problem that we do our innovations with many stakeholders, and communication is a challenge. So that's
Right.
an update from our organization.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being with us, and also for these words about how you cope with this crisis and the things going on. So now hopefully you can get some inspiration looking back at some of the webinars before, but also today I think we're going to cover some basics that if we discuss together will be useful for all of us. So. With this as an introduction, I guess we've seen all guests, at least external guests. Let's move on to the next slide, which is then a bit of a recap from last time, but at least to just stress the very different types of innovation activities that we have in the innovation process, right? So which we talked about last week. If you look at your portfolio, then projects are probably scattered across different types of activities. As for instance, Maurice mentioned, you have, for instance, some scenarios, you're looking into the future, outside-in perspective, as Angelique mentioned, so discovery activities. And then maybe, you set up some new experiments, or you have some existing experiments going on, which is definitely a different type of activity compared to scouting, seeing what's going on, developing opportunities, seeing new areas for growth. And all of this is yet again different from these acceleration or scale-up activities, which we've talked about last week with Ad van Dongen from ING, talking about his scale-up at the moment and his challenges to pivot this scale-up in these times. So we have different activities. So then looking at talent, and we can come back to that in a bit, we have to recognize that our innovation people and professionals, maybe we want to reallocate them across these activities for which we may need different capabilities. And let's come back to that in a bit. But at least with this under our belts, let's talk about the fundamental aspect of how to motivate and energize our teams and people. Because this was also some of the big challenges last week in Ad's case at ING. All of a sudden, your project comes under scrutiny. Perhaps you have to pivot. You have to go back, validating some fundamentals what you thought were checked. So now let's talk about motivation, and then let's have the ramp model that we use in our program, which is about some fundamental drivers of intrinsic motivation. And this has to do with relatedness, so feeling part of a group, part of a family, if you will, autonomy of the innovation professional, so being able to make your own decisions and have some freedom in your actions, mastery, so developing your capabilities, becoming better at stuff, and also purpose, that everything you do relates to a bigger or a higher cause. So ramp, as we call it. So. Given that perhaps in these times motivation is maybe of an issue because of setbacks, because of pivoting, because of uncertainty, and yes, of course, innovation professionals or innovation drivers might perhaps be very positive people oftentimes, etc. But yet again, motivation is of the utmost importance to innovate and to bring the company along or stakeholders along. So if you look at these motivators, relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I'm curious, looking at your own circumstances, maybe your own feelings or motivation levels, or your work currently to motivate others. If you relate that to these 4 elements. Is there anything for you that stands out? Anything for you that is maybe an eye-opener, something that if you reflect is something that you've been working on actually, or something that you need? So what does these concepts mean to you at the moment?
Yeah, Maurits here. For relatedness, I try to come together with my team via applications like Zoom. We organize a weekly Zoom drinks session, and I ask every colleague to call another one to ask for his, for example, favorite song or guilty pleasure song. We make playlists for the department to use when you work from your home. And well, that goes quite good. I see that autonomy. Well, there is sort of a fear with respect to decreased autonomy, because we don't know what the economic situation in a few months will be. So yeah, that's something which needs attention. Mastery and purpose doesn't differ from the situation before Corona.
Okay. Thank you, Maurits. Thanks. Excellent contribution there. And indeed, in particular, I like your thoughts about relatedness, right? Because all of a sudden we're individually, we're at home, we don't physically meet. So yeah, this part of our job, actually, the social part of it, the family part of it, as you will, or the clan part of it, to some extent, sometimes is might be missing. So these are great examples, as you mentioned, Maurits, to keep the group feeling and the social part of your work, to keep that up and running, and that definitely is a key driver of motivating people. So exactly, this is something that we need. So thanks for that. And anybody else looking at this and also listening to Maurits?
I think it's autonomy, if anything, because now we're expecting teams, the individuals in the team, to be even more autonomous than they already were in our case. And that's a lot to ask, I would say, because we're working with quite young people mostly, and we have 3 major development teams in the organization, and we see different results from different teams, and that's interesting because then the mastery also comes in. So you see where there's less experience, autonomy, there is a link between those, and it's affecting the results quite heftigly the last couple of weeks.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so thanks. So you're already, having this link to mastery and also to teams, which you're going to cover in a bit. So that's wonderful. And indeed, I like this notion of how you address autonomy, because that's then a nice contrast with Maurits, right? Maurits claiming like, okay, maybe that, this autonomy is maybe decreasing or has decreased. And now from you, Nick, we get, and I think that's in general, if I look around me, the case that because of this, working from home, almost automatically is giving the employees a little bit more of autonomy of how they work, when they work, etc. So with some less control mechanisms or different control mechanisms than usually in place. So. This is, I think, something that on average will increase autonomy.
But maybe there is a difference between larger and smaller organizations here as well. I work for quite a big organization, and one of the reflexes in a big organization is to increase control in these situations. So maybe that's.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to tease out. So how is that happening then, Maurits? How is control increased because of what mechanisms or processes or?
I'm not sure what I can share and what not, but in general, I see that aspects like days off, that kind of things. We ask our employees to share more when they, for example, go on holiday. Usually, it's just a manner of putting it in your agenda, and then it's fine. Now we really want to know who is going when to make sure that we use our days off. That people stay healthy, that they do not work the whole year without any vacation, that kind of things. And that's the intention is positive, but I see that sometimes employees feel it like decreased autonomy.
Okay, right, and that I think is an important point of reflection. That if we, you know, if we're in the business of trying to motivate our people, that we also were aware of the possible ramifications of these kind of new processes or new rules or new behaviors of the organization when it comes to motivation. So thanks for that. So we have relatedness, we have autonomy, and indeed mastery. And the reason why I, in the previous slide, introduced these different types of innovation activities is indeed mastery, because especially if we maybe, you know, refocus our innovation portfolio as we discussed last week, and maybe we want to accelerate some projects, or we want to come up with new scenarios, for instance, as in the case of Maurits, or if we want to have this outside-in perspective, as Angelique mentioned, then this means that there are opportunities for people to grow. If we want to make them aware of that they are maybe now, you know, looking at these activities, that they're engaging in different types of capabilities, innovation capabilities, that this is an opportunity for them to experiment with that, to learn with that, if you will. So here I think is the link to mastery, which you maybe, you know, if you were a bit more explicit about it or aware of it, is something that you could use to motivate your people. And then talking about purpose, this higher cause, Arjan already mentioned, stepping in, you know, increasingly we see municipalities or organizations striving for using this crisis for coming out of this crisis with more of a sustainable way of working, like you know, less cars in the city, more cycle tracks, etc. So then it's about already thinking about this vision of the future. And also Angelique already mentioned that, you know, this outside-in perspective, maybe seeing things or making things explicit that others aren't that much aware of. Talking about purpose is then also talking about actually vision and developing vision, even though we might not know at the moment what the future holds. But still, when it comes to motivating people, the communication style, maybe not from senior management as we speak, but maybe on behalf of these innovation drivers like you, is maybe something that can be part of your toolkit. Like what we've already seen before is that, yes, we have to fight fires at this moment in time. But also we have great opportunities now to motivate people by thinking about and talking about the progress and the positivity and the ambition that you have going forward, like this more sustainable future. And also, let's not forget that there's also continuity in these times of crisis. There will, without a doubt, be good things, values, capabilities that you currently have that will still be in place and needed actually in the time to come. So also continuity is something that maybe you want to be aware of and stress and communicate to your colleagues. And let's move on a bit, because this particular notion of vision and communication is something that we'll come back to in a bit. So then, finalizing this part about talent and innovation talent, there's one more thing I would like to share with you before we move on to discuss innovation teams. The model that we use in our innovation programs when it comes to developing innovation talent and also you know, working with that systematically in our organizations has to do with this entrepreneurial competence model brought to us by the European Union. And based on an excellent review, it distinguishes 15 distinct entrepreneurship competencies that we can all teach and learn and try and develop. And they come in three clusters, three groups. Like the first one has to do with developing ideas and opportunities. So it has to do with indeed also sustainable thinking, for instance, from an ethical, societal point of view. It has to do with creativity. It has to do also judging or valuing ideas, and also interestingly about developing a vision communication, and bringing others along in that vision. So now, looking at just these entrepreneurial competences and maybe reflecting on yourself or what you see in your colleagues, in your innovation team, maybe on looking at the needs that you have at the moment, maybe to come up with scenarios, maybe to come up with a positive vision, looking at these entrepreneurial competences. To what extent do you already have them in yourself, in your teams, or is this, talking about mastery, is this maybe something that needs further development or attention? I'm curious. So maybe Marjolein, maybe first back to you with a question. You mentioned at the beginning, like, okay, I'm here first and foremost just to learn and to see what innovation talent actually means, or innovation teams. So now looking at this model, which we are now going to build up step by step. Talking about entrepreneurship, is this something in your organization that you're looking for, or that you currently can exploit? How would you say does this pan out for you?
Well, to be honest, during this Corona crisis, we did an experiment to explore to Belgium, so that's a good thing. But for opportunities, I think there are a lot of ideas we can use now. But my business is kind of different for others, but I think there are a lot of chances currently, like digital, later also taking the train instead of the flight. So yeah,
nice. And then the question is, do you have the people and the competence on board to exploit and develop these opportunities in a profound way?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what we talk about here, just to be aware of the fact that, hey, this is something that actually is maybe present in our team in more or less extent, and it's maybe something that we can develop also from a mastery point of view, just to motivate people.
Exactly.
For motivation, but also for the business outcomes that we need. Right.
Ferdinand, if you were also talking about with Ad and others lately, I think if you want to, I'm looking at the flower and I see the self-awareness and self-efficacy. Right. I think related to Corona, I think that is a really important skill. Like we discussed now, we are being perceived as working on the future, whereas the platform is on fire right now. So I think that that skill has to be amplified, so that we are really self-aware of when to talk about what topic to whom. Because if we now go into the managing board or some management team saying, "Hey guys, let's talk about the future," and there's only this totally short-term mindset. We might create the opposite effect. Then the people the other side, the management team might go like, well, this really proves that these guys from innovation are really totally lost. So I think that skill is what we are also trying to focus on a bit in the teams that we have. So within the project teams, we have a focus on other things, more to the future. But with the interaction between the teams and their leadership, we try to amplify that self-awareness and the self-efficacy skill.
Okay, wonderful. Right. Yeah. And I think this reflective part of your job, I can definitely see that's very, very important at the moment. And so I now have all these entrepreneurial competences on the screen, including indeed those self-efficacy and awareness capabilities. So is there anything else that stands out for you? Aside from self-awareness, anybody? For me, at least, it's coping with ambiguity and risk, right? Because at the moment, of course, we are in an ambiguous time, full of uncertainties and signals or developments difficult to interpret or to predict. So that definitely is something that you would expect in general in an innovation team to be well developed. But even then, it's maybe something that we can be more explicit about and bring back to the larger organization, or to reflect on that in our own team. So, so here we have at least some overview for you to look into when it comes to developing and assessing the teams that you have and the people that you have going forward.
Ferdinand, again, I like what Maurits said about the brains for Corona, if I'm correct, Maurits.
Yeah.
So that's basically mobilizing resources. So at DSM we have a face mask project together with a number of other parties. And what you see there is we want to mobilize our colleagues, but also these external partners around this topic. So that's purpose, really purpose-driven resource mobilization. Fantastic. It brings out the best, but also some of the worst in people.
Yeah.
What we also find that is, and maybe that's also what you said, Maurits, aligning these resources toward that purpose and then coping with the ambiguity, that is, well, at least in our case, a big challenge, because everybody jumps on the first issue at hand. It's a very interesting thing, so that we have to now to have an increased, accelerated innovation, because there are, as you probably are aware of, there's still not enough face masks. So everybody wants to do something, but maybe Pietje, this is not your best skill set, and maybe Marie is better at doing that. So you try to put on this normal, like, project management perspective on something that's really ambiguous and highly risk, and that's where I see. Maybe to Marjoleин's point, is more about a very big experiment than that we now can say we know how to do it. So I'm really triggered also by Maurits's remark about the brains for Corona, how to mobilize, how to leverage Corona to work on a purpose, but still in an effective way, rather than just running around. And I'm not saying that we're doing that, but there's a sort of into the indication there.
And on top of that, I guess, Maurits, as you mentioned, in an ecosystem, right, with which requires collaboration across the boundary of your organization.
Yeah, exactly. We define criteria to fund project ideas from TNO colleagues. So we think we had now 2 rounds where colleagues could pitch their ideas, and if they matched the criteria, they got funded. One of the examples is that we give hospitals advice when they need to extend their intensive care capacity, how to take care of ventilation to make sure that they don't spread the virus through their ventilation systems. That kind of things is what we're doing. I think one of the important things is that we arranged budget for it. And we mobilized colleagues to come up with ideas and make a very short decision cycle. And that's what I miss a bit in this flower. That's being agile, because I see that the colleagues who were successful are the colleagues who are agile and adapt very fast to new situations.
And that is exactly, I think. So thanks for this discussion. Thanks also for bringing it up, Arjan. This is actually the point, Maurits, where I would like to transition to the team level. Where exactly this is something that we can discuss, Maurits. So, because obviously,
sorry for interrupting, but also it's not just you want to push the flower, but I think, Maurits, the topic there, coping with ambiguity and risk, agile is a way to cope with ambiguity, and it's a very nice way, but maybe not the only one. So for me, if I look at the flower of Feyenoord, I would put how to cope with ambiguity. We need to cope with ambiguity and risk. How could I do that? So we're now tapping into this resource of indeed agile and Scrum, the whole thing that you also know are aware.
Right. Yeah, and then
maybe one thing that to add to the discussion that we just had is also, and maybe that is also linked, Ferdinand, to the step that you want to make towards the teams. That we have known for a long time that there are different skills of people adding to your innovation capability. And some people are really, really great at coming up with the ideas, but really not in executing them. And I think also in facilitating innovation, maybe more than ever, because as Arjan was saying, a lot of people are jumping on the train, and it's mostly from a good, it's good, right, from a positive thinking, but they might not be the ones that have the skills needed to actually come to execution. So I think if one of the things that is really, really important also to have within an innovation team is the capability to objectively assess the capabilities of people and teams on the execution side. And in the program, and we probably don't have the time now to dig really deep into that, but we do discuss in the program that ACA offers also is very much in depth, what kind of tools you have and how do you actually assess those capabilities, and also not only on an individual level but also on a team level.
Exactly, and that's exactly the transition I wanted to make. So thanks, Angelique, for introducing that in an excellent way, because here you see how everything comes together, right? The types of innovation, also the innovation, how it unfolds from discovery to incubate to accelerate. That you need different capabilities, which we now have, let's say, a nice flower of, and indeed at the team level, also over time in a project, ideally you have a good match. But obviously, in reality, we don't have that opportunity to come up with ideal teams. But still, having this knowledge helps us to assess teams, to maybe prevent some pitfalls that we might expect, and also we might set up a program to develop people and then we talk again about mastery. So talking about teams, let me briefly introduce that so that we have some time left for this discussion. I always love this picture, where I think still in this time it's true that even though, let's say, the market or the outside world is so ambiguous indeed, still when it comes to innovation, and it's at the end of the day, it's about the execution, right? And the people doing that. So the team being of utmost importance, and what does that team do? How do they work? What's their capability to execute on the idea, which in itself is just an ingredient, a starting point, and should unfold and develop in that process engaged in by that particular team. So talking about teams, this is a model that we use in our program, and I think also in this time it's very relevant, because first, I think, and indeed also this goes back to, I think, what Nick mentioned earlier, having 3 teams, maybe with different seniority levels or experience levels, but with three different types of performances. But here we have an overall perspective on group performance and group effectiveness, that it's not just about evaluating a team based on their performance when it comes to the particular product or service that's being produced by the team, but it's also about the growth and the development of the people in the team themselves. And then again, we talk about mastery, which is, again, this very important motivation driver. But I think for now, maybe that we can focus the discussion first and foremost on what's at the bottom, namely the ability of the group to become better and better at working together. And this, of course, in this time when we're all of a sudden forced to work at home and at distance with new means, new tools, etc., still maybe with the same task at hand, this ability to develop your group process maybe is at the moment something that has some or needs some priority. So that's what I would like to focus on in the upcoming minutes, and then to complete the model, what then are the drivers of group performance typically? And then we see 3 groups again of drivers of this group effectiveness. We have the wider context of the team, of the group. So how does it fit in the larger organization? So then it's about the link to the overall mission, maybe also about rewards, etc. The resources and the environment that you have available. So that's the context. And also the structure of the team itself, like what's the mission of the particular team? What's the culture in the team? Is the task and the goal, is that clear? Who is part of the team? What are their roles, etc.? Is there enough time for that particular team? So aside from context and structure, which we can all discuss in great detail, again, I would like to focus, and that goes to maybe also agility, Maurits. I would like to maybe focus the discussion for now, because I think that's for now is most relevant, given that we want to focus on the ability of the team to become better at working together. What is, let's say, the ability of the group process? Like, how does a team make decisions? How are conflicts being resolved? How is communication taking place? How are boundaries inside and also outside the organization being managed? And also, how are problems being solved in the group? So this is something that I wanted to focus on. So before I have one more trigger, if you will, for learning and group discussion, looking at this model, and then in particular on the ability to work together, and then also the processes in your team, which are mentioned here on these slides. Is this, and then maybe also, first, maybe Nick, if you're still with us, how do you think about this now, reflecting on the three teams that you mentioned that have a variety of outcomes at the moment?
Well, first, what I think is, from an entrepreneur perspective, I think there's a big dilemma that's not really in here. And that's due to the COVID situation. It's really hard to add, as a small organization, if we want to add seniority, we need to recruit them. But adding them to the team is quite hard now. That's what we usually do if a team needs more knowledge or seniority. And that's really hard now because it's hard to, inwerken, I'm not sure what the English word is, or adding people to the group is quite hard. Yeah. And also, I think if we look at those structures and the processes, etc., I think those are being forced to grow almost organically, and the one group is doing that way better than the other, and I think that's the big difference. I think that's also what drives the effectiveness.
Okay, so for you, if you assess what's going on in your organization, it has not so much to do with the processes and the way of working in the teams, but more has to do with structures. Is that correct?
Yeah. For example, we have one team. There is this guy in this team that he's like this complete nerd about building processes. And the first thing he did when this all happened was he was building processes for his own team. And the other teams were just waiting for the processes to come, but they didn't. So that's a big difference between two teams. Okay,
but at the same time, this does tell me that it's actually at the process level where, let's say, the struggle is, like, how do we work together? How do we communicate? How do we make decisions? How do we therefore enhance our ability to work together? How, if we, how can we be successfully be agile? If you maybe phrased by Maurits.
Indeed. And it's I think that's also the coping of ambiguity. I think the group leadership in this case really helped this specific team. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So that's your particular case, Nick. Anybody else reflecting on let's say team performance from a group dynamic point of view about processes to work together?
Yeah, one thing that I would like to respond to what Nick was saying, because that is something that I really recognize as being very effective, is the cross-pollination between teams when they are working in a setting. So I remember from my history in ING, we would from our innovation team, we would orchestrate that. So we would, for instance, let those teams work side by side on, in the same location or at in close contact to actually facilitate the cross pollination, or, for instance, organize demo days where they would then find each other and make each other stronger. And that is, of course, a challenge in the current times because that can now not grow organically because those people are basically already having sometimes a hard time finding each other within their team, let aside that they would be able to have that between teams. Mm-hmm. So that is an interesting challenge, and I'm curious if one of you has done maybe some experiments on, I don't know, bigger demo days to still try to make those kinds of connections, or maybe in another way.
Yeah, for us, they're all cancelled due to the Corona situation. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a good decision, but that's what the result is. Yeah. Normally this is in place, but this is all fall away due to the current situation.
Yeah. And have you tried to find a way to organize for that digitally, or any best practices maybe on that?
No, we didn't.
No, because that's I'm just curious. Yeah, just curious. I don't know if it would work. If I look at the kind of demo days that we would typically organize, we would have, because we were in ING working in an international setting. So there we quite often were already challenged by the fact that people were actually in different geographical locations and simply not in the same space. But then it was always still a combination. So we would have the teams working side by side and have those teams in the demo days, and then we would always have a couple of teams from across borders, also doing sharing their learnings or sharing their challenges in a demo day setup, but then joining virtually. We have never done it completely virtual, so I'm not 100% sure if that would work, but I do know that also the combination, and that there were actually links being made also across borders where people were not in the same location.
I like the idea, Angelique, also on maybe not a corporate level, but at a platform level. So at DSM, we have a couple of bigger platforms. So they're bigger ventures. There's approximately 20 to 40 people in there, but they're working on different value propositions. So you might also want to organize, I'm just writing it down. It's like small mini demo days within those platforms, just to keep people connected. Like you said, just to keep people connected and focused and know what they're working on.
Yeah.
Something else that we do is, and I think that is probably also the role of the innovation driver. And it used to be, I think, also in the Hackman approach, is have a coach for a team. As a very good colleague of mine said, there's a number of sometimes you're working in the machine and sometimes you're working on the machine. Some people also like to work in the machine and some people like to work on the machine. But what happens now in this Corona times, at least in a number of projects, they're accelerated. There's a lot of stress, and everybody's looking at the short term and making all those kind of decisions. So they're mostly working in the machine. So we have now allocated coaches to these teams to also once in a week or once in a while take a step back and ask, are we now doing effectively? On the project, on the process, but also like Angelique and Fernand were saying, intra-project. So had the interface management between other projects, because that sometimes gets lost in all the hurry of the day-to-day hurry of this Corona thing.
Thanks so much, Arjan, for
one of the things that I recognize from that is that we were always in ING joking about ourselves and mentioning, the word glue, like we are the glue in between the different intersections, also between projects, and of course it works differently in every organization, and then Corona is a complicating factor in that. But I do think it's really interesting to start from that perspective and see how the role of the glue works in the new normal, let's say.
True, and so building on top of that and taking the last step, because let's take another 5 minutes, and then we have a full 1 hour session. What this discussion shows is the importance of recognizing the process also as something to consider as a group effectiveness indicator, and also that the group process maybe in these times requires some explicit attention. So how do we solve problems? How do we communicate in these days? How do we make those decisions? And then indeed having a coach, as Arjan mentioned, is one of the tactics to help ensure also in these times that the team renews itself or becomes effective and becomes better at working together. So finally, therefore, I'd like to introduce this notion of where are we? Of what we call psychological safety. This is one of the most important points of attention for team effectiveness, research showed. So really to have, and that's what it means at the end of the day, to have a learning climate, a safe environment in our organization where we can learn really human-centered actually, so very much, I think close to us as innovation professionals, but then very, very human-centered with ourselves, with our team members. How can everybody contribute, right? And then, having resources like a coach for feedback, but also first and foremost, and there we go again, having a vision, a positive vision for our team or for the wider context, is the purpose, if you will, is one of the most important things for creating a safe environment first and foremost. So you see that a lot of things come together at the end of this webinar, where we want to create a learning climate where we can experiment with our digital way of working together as a team. where indeed we need coaches, but also we need to do this as a team, as a group itself. So point number 4. So really the togetherness is being developed. Then we have also time for, again, removing barriers. We talked about that earlier. It's the last point. But also the point above that, provide support groups, right? So maybe breakout groups where we can informally chat about our discussions, about what's frustrating us, so that we can air this, we can discuss this, and we can have a good feedback culture as well. And I think one of the most important things, at least for me to finalize, is that we want everybody to contribute, as always, but definitely also in this digital area. So therefore, also for me, it wasn't uncomfortable, even though it was a technical glitch at the beginning of this call, that we had this moment of silence. Okay, because this is something that we've practiced in the webinar last week. For creativity, we need individual input. We want to prevent groupthink. So we want to also give, silence a chance in a team meeting, so that everybody, also the introvert people perhaps, have an opportunity to speak. That's also why, and that's why I practice what I preach. I also try and give everybody, let's say, the opportunity to speak at the beginning of this call. And I think that's the way that also you can maybe help and contribute some safety and a learning environment in your teams. So for the last couple of minutes, is there anybody who would like to reflect on this, ask questions about this? Maybe Marjolein or Bastiaan, if you're still with us. Is there anything that you would like to pick out from this list, or something that you would like to mention? Anybody? Marjolein, if I may ask you, you came in with questions, you wanted to learn, and you see, I didn't share too much except for some models, some concepts, and I wanted to work with you to co-create, to get some input, and I think it was great to have all of your examples and experiences being shared. But looking at you, Marjolein, you came in with some questions or just some curiosity. What did this session bring, and do you have any question left?
Currently we're working on our company instead of inside the company. So, okay. And I think from as well, I currently as leadership, I'm giving my team all the way task. So I think I have to get a better group structure. So I'm going to work on that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my goal for this week, for today. Okay.
And that was your takeaway so far. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maurits, how about you? Are you still with us? You've shared the pamphlet. Thank you so much in the chat. I think Maurits had to leave. Maurits, yes.
Yeah, nothing to add here.
Okay, thank you. Bastiaan, are you still with us, or are you in another call at the moment?
Just switch in again. But nothing to add.
Okay, no. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nick, anything from your side?
No, not specifically. No, in this case, no.
Thank you. And then, keeping an eye on time, and then we're nicely in this 1 hour slot. Angelique, Arjan, as our fellow coaches in the program, some final words from you.
Yeah, I picked up as usual. I learned a lot again. I picked up a couple of things. I might, if the other participants will allow me, I might reach out for some further explanation. Mainly also on the thing that you are doing, Maurits, with the brains for Corona. I just also on the more practical side, how have you guys organized that? I find that very interesting. What I find challenging is indeed it is so enticing, uitdagend to make this into an experiment, because the crisis amplifies a lot of things. But I'm also, there's this ethical line where you have to be very careful, because as I see in our teams, like you said, Ferdinand, a number of our colleagues not love it, but they embrace it, the uncertainty, in an agile or non-agile way, but they embrace it. And a number of colleagues are really, I think there's some of them are scared, actually. So I have to be very careful. I have to be very, very self-aware that to one person you can talk in terms of potential and forward-looking, in terms of the mountain that you show, Ferdinand. and to other people, you have to adjust your tone to say, "Well, it's not that bad," and to accommodate for their fear that they have. And that is for me what I find also a challenge, but also very learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the if it comes to this togetherness, if organize these breakout learning sessions for creating safety, this is the platform to address those emotions. Also, one-on-one conversations with direct colleagues, as Maurits mentioned. I think some excellent exercises there. Thanks, Angelique. Maurits, you wanted to say something, Maurits?
Oh, feel free to contact me, Arjen.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Maurits.
Angelique.
Yeah, maybe to add to what Arjan was saying, I was triggered by something, and I'm also going to brainstorm with myself a little bit on that topic. I think what is really interesting in the role of an innovation driver is that we need to be, as I said before, a little bit the glue within our organizations to also connect people. That's a very important role. And then the question is, how do you do that when you're physically not in the same place? So that is something that I will just start brainstorming a bit on, also with myself, how you could do that practically, because I like the bigger picture questions, but I also like to make things practical, as the people that I know me for. And I think the other one is about the thing that Arjan was saying about the fear of people, or the very personal. We need to really navigate and really read the people and the teams that we are working with. That is, within the current setting, sometimes a bit more challenging because we're physically not in the same place. So I think always for an innovation driver, it is really important to ask the right questions, also when you are in the same room. But specifically now, these questions also sometimes maybe become different questions because you cannot always in the best way read the body language or really adapt to how a person is really feeling, but more have to rely on what they're saying. So also, let's say, looking into the message underneath, if you will, that is a very interesting topic for me. It has been actually already for a while been a very interesting topic, because I also work as a coach, and there also, of course, I need to do that now virtually instead of physically. But it's that was an interesting insight, and something that I want to also research a little bit further and brainstorm a little bit with myself, because I have no one else here that I'm currently can brainstorm with.
As a starting point, that's excellent. That's where we should start, and then definitely share those ideas and have interactions with all of us. We have our LinkedIn group, for instance, as you know. Yeah. So please reach out, and let's keep this community going. Keeping an eye on time, let's wrap it up. So thank you so much, because this is exactly what I wanted to do. Just me introducing some concepts and talking you through, let's say, some essentials at high level of our program, our wider program about innovation excellence, as also Angelique mentioned. That we have more time to apply, to dive deeper, etc., to work with your cases. But for now, this was, I think, exactly what we wanted to do. With your help, make it more practical, learn together in these times which require maybe a particular approach. So thank you so much for now. Call to action for next week would be to have a wider perspective on entrepreneurial and innovation cultures more in general. So we definitely aim for a larger audience, given that this is, let's say, the overall objective typically, how, going from people to teams to processes to vision, leadership, structure. How, at the end of the day, is that going to contribute to a sustainable entrepreneurial culture in our organizations? And we will have a particular focus, maybe kind of a contradiction or a paradox seemingly, but how do best practices and tools and techniques fit into that process towards an entrepreneurial culture? So that's going to be the topic next week. So if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to share them with us. We have our LinkedIn group, and we can also be easily found on the internet. We'll reach out to you as well. So looking forward to meeting you next week, Friday, again, in our familiar time slots between 10 and 11 a.m. So with that, thank you so much, and hope to see you next week. Thank you, and bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ferdinand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Maurits.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.